So we are back with a actual headset again, and welcome to Let's Get Tenure. Uh, rather than continuing what I talked about in the last video, I thought I would just kind of play the game for a few minutes, uh, kind of show you how relaxing it is and not focus too much on the harder concepts. So we're just going to hit play. And this is going to be really slow, so I apologize. But the laptop I'm on is just not really compatible with recording and playing at 10 speed and having a city this large. So the first thing that I'm really interested in right now is building another trading post to be a bank. And the reason for that is that I have 1,600 wool coats. I am purchasing wool coats, but I also have tailors making them. And I don't want to do anything else with this surplus. So I want to take about 750 of them and I want to just kind of hoard them in the event of a disaster, in the event of whatever. And so the trading posts that I have on this main river are stocked with specific items. In this case, it's 2,500 ale, and it is, purchasing food and coal. So these trading posts on the river all have different specializations, is what I'll say, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. But the trading posts that I have on this river, for example, and no traders will ever come to this trading post. These are just the banks that I've talked about. So, for example, this one is 100% full. And now, throughout my map, all of my banks are actually 100% full. So this is a problem that I want to solve by building kind of a final bank where I can kind of tweak the resources that I have producing or purchasing and not have them clogging up my storage barns. So I want to keep my number of wool coats high in my reserves, but I don't want them to be all over the map taking up space in storage barns. So this is actually kind of a little more difficult than it sounds. I think I've gone over most of this map and tried to find one place on these spare rivers or side rivers where I can place a trading post, and I have not been able to find it. And if you're watching now, you can see that all of these positions look pretty good, but they're always one square off. And so this can really become frustrating, if you have a specific purpose in mind. And this is where the flatten tool really can become very useful to you. It's really simple to use it to modify the landscape a bit to be able to place anything, trading posts, houses, brewers, marketplaces, tunnels, anything in between. So, keep that in mind. But with respects to this one here, because it's my last trading post, I think I'm going to go ahead and just break a rule and put it on the main river right here. This is a location I found before starting this video. And so this just, it's not exactly where I want it to be, but I don't have to enable trading here, and I can just use this as a bank. And, speaking of the banks, I want to kind of go into the town hall quickly and show you the real value here. So, currently we have a food surplus. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, we're right around 1 million. I think it was over 1 million when the video started, and now it's down to like 999,000. So if you look into the storage areas, you can see we have a ton of peach, a ton of chestnut, wheat, etc. But what's not being counted in these numbers is what I have in items and trading posts. And so if we go into here, you can see an entirely separate, bank of goods. So if you start counting it up between the corn, the fish, the mutton, the venison, the walnut, the chestnut, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of food. You're looking at 7,200 steel tools, 8,000 warm coats, I think there's like 12,000. Let me scroll down. Oh, where'd it go? Yeah, there's 12,900 stone. So if there's ever a tornado that comes through, I have everything I need to just kind of withstand that and get the goods out to the people. I mean, you can almost think of these as like FEMA disaster recovery sites. So that's just kind of trying to highlight that. There are a couple other things I want to talk about on this video because I think it's going to be the last one before I hit 200. We're in year 160 right now, and at this stage, what I'm going to call Endgame, there's some observations that are fairly interesting. So one of them, and this is really something I've only started doing recently, is that these 6 trading posts here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 along the northern shore, are stocking themselves with corn right now. You can see they have 9,999 corn. And what I've done is gone into the actual individual traders themselves and disabled corn and disabled wheat from being imported to these specific trading posts. So what this is doing, and this was somewhat talked about in the last video, but what this is doing is, as far as the corn and the wheat goes, it's allowing me to purchase more fruit and more vegetables with those items. So you can see here I have 88,000 wheat, and I am no longer growing wheat. I've destroyed my wheat fields and built taverns. So all of the wheat is imported, and I have 74,000 corn, which is also being imported. And wheat and corn are still being imported from all of these other trading posts along this river. So, this one here is still purchasing grains. We're still getting more wheat and more corn being purchased here, okay? But up here, we're selling that wheat and we're selling that corn, and we're trying to purchase more fruit and vegetables, okay? So in that spirit, in this kind of end game, because at this point you can see I have a surplus of 1 million food. I've got all the steel tools and warm coats I could ever need. I've got all the herbs I could ever need. I mean, this is as self-sufficient as you can ever get. And I also have 400 laborers that are just sitting there to take people's jobs. Plus, in addition to that, I could immediately eliminate, 40 gatherers. I could add 100 gatherers, or 80 rather. I could disable 100 fishermen. I could disable 100 hunters. I have more trading posts that I can build, and I actually have trading posts that are not even purchasing the full amount of food. I mean, this, sorry, is a bad example, but like, for example, this one's just turned off. I have them completely stocked with items ready to start auto trading if I need to, start bringing more food in. But, quite honestly, I'm at the top of a population wave. So you might have read about this in other threads or seen it in other videos, but your population, when you eventually stop building houses, is going to turn into a sine wave, which is what you can kind of see here. It's just kind of an up and down, up and down, up and down. And what you can witness here on the right-hand side is that I have already crested. So my population is on the way down right now, and then it will eventually go back up. Excuse me. So if you look at this over a 5-year window, you can see the crest right in the middle, and now it's gradually starting to go down, and then it's going to hit a low point, and it's going to start to go back up. And, having 400 laborers out of 1,200 total adults is a really good number to have, especially with all of the, especially with 240 people in non-essential food-producing jobs. I don't need to have these hunters. I don't need to have these fishermen. I don't need to have these gatherers. So in reality, I have over 600 laborers, which is about 1/2 of my total adult population, and they're ready to start doing the jobs of other people, like my vendors, my traders, my brewers, my herbalists, my clerics and physicians and teachers, in the case that someone dies. And so this is where you just kind of get into a cycle where there's just really there's nothing that can destroy your city other than a tornado, which we already talked about how we're well stocked for one of those. A disease, we have lots of physicians. Uh, you have pasture diseases, which are even easier to deal with, and that's pretty much it, other than fires. And one thing I have been doing with fires, just as kind of some closing thoughts, is anytime I have a fire, I've just been going in and building as many wells in the general vicinity as I possibly can. And oh, one other thing to show. So relative to the art, relative to talking about the production of stone and iron or coal, domestically versus importing it, I wanted to talk about. So we're looking at 100 years of production. So for stone, I have produced in 100 years 2,900 stone. And that means I picked 2,900 stone up off the ground because I have never had a quarry. But I have used 53,000 stone in 100 years. And to be fair, this is year 160. So I've used more than 53,000 stone. If you look at the iron, it's 22,000 to 3,800. If you look at the coal, it's 67,000. So importing this is so much more efficient than any other means of generating these resources. And at the same time, you don't have to have mines or quarries taking up central real estate on your map. So it really is just beneficial to never have a quarry or a mine. It just at no point is a good idea. And then one other thing to note before I'm finished is at this late game, the prioritization of food producing jobs becomes much different. So in this in this inventory tab, if we look at what we have in storage, we have, 100,000 peaches, we have a bunch of chestnuts, we have a bunch of wheat, we have corn, etc. And what you want to be doing as the game runs at 10 speed like it is now, and we're not really making any decisions, is balancing the items in your town hall. So the fact that I have 100,000 peach to 37,000 apple tells me that I should probably go through all of my taverns, and anyone who is making apple ale, switch them to peach. Or not if everyone, but most of them, and maybe a couple of the other ones, like plum or peach or whatever. Or not peach, rather, but, plum or cherry. So you want to try to keep these things as balanced as possible. And anytime you see an item that you have way more of than another item, you want to do something with it. So that kind of goes back to one of the things we talked about earlier about now stocking corn in these trading posts. So with that in mind, you have in this particular city, we have herdsmen, we have gatherers, we have fishermen, and we have hunters. I have gotten rid of the farmers because they are by far the most useless. Now, next to the farmers as being the most useless are your gatherers, and they're useless because while they are very overpowered in the beginning of the game, they only bring in food, and the food types that they bring in, which are vegetables or possibly proteins, are just so easily traded for that they just become irrelevant. Then next to that, you have your fishermen, and the reason that I like fishermen here, and I might say that they're my favorite, is that I also am putting fish into these 6 trading posts. And so this is really allowing me to diversify and import more fruits, which are for ale production to generate more wealth, but also other types of vegetables and proteins, etc. So, when you're at a million surplus, what you really want to do is try to keep yourself as close to 1 million as possible without being over 1 million. Because if you're over 1 million, everyone's going to stop working. So having 100 fishermen working, but trying to take all of the fish that they catch and put them into these trading posts is not only removing those food items from my storage barns to get me under the million surplus, but it's also allowing me to diversify my food, my total distribution of food. Like for cherries, for beans, for all of those other things. So, after fishermen, you really have the hunters, and the reason hunters I think are arguably better is that they're producing leather, which you can then use to make coats. And in addition to leather, they are allowing you to put venison into these trading posts. And venison trades at three, a value of three, as opposed to the fish's value of one. But you will get more fish than. So, I mean, it's very easy to get a trading post with 999,000 fish, whereas here you can see I only have 2,000 venison. So, the difference between the two has to do with the fact that you have leather there. Above the gatherers, the hunters, and the fishermen, and the farmers, I mean, you have your herdsmen, and these are just the best form of food in the game. Uh, I mean, I only have 15 of them, and between the amount of meat that I'm generating and the wool and the leather, which is allowing my tailors to create warm coats or potentially create leather coats for trade, or simply trading the raw wool or the raw leather, I mean, that it's just that simple to have a huge amount of food surplus from a very small number of citizens. And for that reason alone, they really are the best. So in this city here, we don't have too many of them, to the point where it's a gimmick. But, for example, and I think one of my previous videos, there's a city called Nubopolis where we just had a ton of sheep farms, or sheep pastures. And you can just see how easy it is to just have basically an entire economy based around wool. So, as you approach this end game, I think one of the important things you need to really think about, in summation, is if you look at my food production on 1 year, I'm producing 57,000 food and I'm using 250,000 food. So I have a trade-based economy, but in addition to having a trade-based economy, I have a trade-based economy that is primarily centered around ale, but which is also diversified into firewood, into venison and fish, and now to some degree corn, just because of the sheer number of trading posts I have. So what you need to make a decision on is whether you want to have a trade-based economy or do you want to have a self-sustaining economy. And a self-sustaining economy means you don't need to trade for anything, or you're trading for very limited things. So that is, I think, the first really big decision. And then if you do pick a trade-based economy, there are just so many different ways you can base your trade around. There's so many things that will work and that you can exploit. I mean, especially if you're talking about the difference between vanilla and CC. But, I mean, I hope this channel has been somewhat beneficial. I'm looking forward to getting my achievement in another 30 or 40, 39 years. That's probably going to take me way more hours than I would like. As talked about in the last video, just before I go, is you can see how many marketplaces I have and how close they are to each other. That really seems to help quite a bit with just creating a great deal of material wealth and having places to put items to keep everybody else very efficient. So really, if you want to have big cities like this, if you want to go up to 2,000 or 3,000 people, you need to really think about efficiency, stone roads, distributing things very equally so that schools are not too far away, so that hospitals are not too far away, that you have enough wells, that you have enough laborers. Laborers are really important. You want laborers. And also you want to have a very diverse diet and be able to distribute that across a large map. So those are really kind of the key central advanced concepts in this game, and if you can digest those, then it becomes a game where you just watch it play at 10x like this, and there really isn't anything else to do at all, unless you feel like it. So have fun. I really enjoy this game. I think I'm at like 600 hours on Steam. I really hope they make another one. So thanks a lot for watching, guys.